and welcome to Life with Legends. I'm Justin Bell. History is a funny old thing, isn't it? Because when we reflect back on history, no matter the subject, it is easy to focus on the central figure and forget that to simply operate on a daily basis, there must have been key people who helped the star of the show function. People so close to the source that they are truly sole witness to the making of aforementioned history. The supporting role in the movie of someone else's life, so to speak. One such person is Brenda Vernor, who for many years was the legendary Enzo Ferrari's personal assistant, based at the factory in Modena, the only woman amongst 199 men working there at the time. Imagine that. Well, I've known Brenda for many years, thanks to her friendship with Dad, since he was at Ferrari in 1970 racing in Formula One. So when the opportunity came to spend a morning with Brenda at her friend's house in West Palm Beach, right after the Ferrari Cavallino event, I thought, what a great idea. Let me take Dad with me as a surprise. Brenda is 90 now, but sharp as a knife and still faithfully loyal to the old man. But what a lovely experience, talking to someone that was right there as Ferrari took off. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode, because the Brendas of this world won't be with us forever, and their first-hand stories are too intimate and special to pass by undocumented. The lady who worked with Ferrari. Enjoy. Do you sing when you paint?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Did you sing a lot growing up?
You
She's
know,
terrible.
I will tell you what happened. I sing in many. No, they love me.
They do love you. So anyway, Brenda, I'm so glad that we got to do this. When I saw you at Cavallino, it was perfect. And I said to Dad, you won't believe who I just saw. I got off the stage and
They all go.
There you were with your arms up. I thought, wow, it's more attention than I thought I was going to get. But of course, as soon as I saw you, I was like, you've got to be able to see Dad.
Yes,
That's the most important part of being here.
The best couple in the world.
I know. So you came over for Cavallino.
Yes,
And you're staying for 3 weeks.
yes.
And is
With
it
my
just nice
friends
to
back
see
here.
everybody?
Yes, it's the first time I've been out of Maranello for 3 years.
Is it really?
Since COVID.
Wow. I know this. So I thought I'd bring Dad, because the point of this series is called Life with Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I sat with Mario and I sat with Jackie, which was very enlightening. And I'm doing Jeff Gordon next week, and I'm kind of getting older guys and the younger ones.
The olders are better.
Well, the older ones are a little more important because it's like I did Parnelli Jones.
Yeah.
4 months ago, and he'll never probably be heard in public again.
Yes.
No
would I.
And the whole point of it is not to have to talk about, like, with the drivers about what race they did and things. It's really to find out stories behind it all, and that's what it's all about. So when Dad goes to any Ferrari event, any event in the world, the first thing they want to talk to you about is what it was like driving for Enzo.
That's right. Yeah,
so, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, whichever way you look at it, Ferrari is the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest name in motorsport history and the history of cars. And especially having met him and got to know him, and just how everything reacted. I mean, the stories of being with him and going to his place at Bellare Adriatico with lunch with Chris.
Yes.
In my first year there, I just remember so well. I was only there. Arrived in June, and I was given a couple of three Formula 2 races, and had some good results basically. And but apparently if you did Le Mans, you did the Italian Grand Prix, which I did and Chris did and Jackie did, and afterwards you were invited to go to lunch with Mr. Ferrari on the Sunday. And if you were invited to his house in Bellaria on the Sunday, that meant that you were going to get the contract for the next year. So Chris and I were invited to go on the Sunday. So we went across in his Alfa Romeo to Bellaria Adriatico, and I believe I'm right, Signora Lara was there cooking, and Enzo was walking around this small place on the beach in Bellaria Adriatico near Rimini. And that was sort of welcome to Ferrari, to be honest.
Amazing.
And of course, all during that time, I'd met young
And
Miss
young-
Brenda, Senora Brenda.
So, how long were you actually with Enzo?
I was with him from 77 until 83, 84.
Wow.
So why didn't I meet you? I was there in '68.
Yes,
Where were you then?
I was teaching English in Modena.
Well, there you are. She was around.
Yeah.
I was around.
So I knew her, but I knew you while I was at Ferrari.
Yes, I know, because-
in those 68, 69, but you weren't
Because
working
Piero
for
was
Ferrari.
my student. Piero Ferrari was my student. So, and I used to go to the house quite a lot for lunch with the family. I did a lot for the family. With Piero's mother, I used to go and look after her. She has a house in Serramazzone, and the old man asked me if I would go and keep her company. So I used to go to work and then go up to Serramazzone and stay with her at the weekend.
Amazing. No.
So that's how it started. And he
No,
just knew
no.
them socially.
I tell you what, Mike Parks, my sort of boyfriend, if you can say that, lived in the same block of flats that Piero lived in with his mother and his wife and daughter. So I used to, and the old man used to come every evening to visit them.
Yeah.
And lots of times, as Mike and I were coming out or going in, we met him.
Yeah.
And he said to me one evening, you know what, I think I might take you as my secretary. And I said, I think you must be nuts. Anyway, that was it, finished there. And then Mike had his bad accident and unfortunately died. And about a week later, the old man called me. The telephone rang, and I'd just taken the dogs out, and I was angry with them because they're making me angry. I picked up and said, "Pronto?" And I heard a voice. "This is Enzo Ferrari. Are you angry?" I said, "No, angry? No, I'm not angry." He said, "Well, what about coming to work for me?" I said, "Oh, I don't know about that." He said, "Well, come tomorrow at Fiorano, and we'll talk about it." So I went the next day in the afternoon to Fiorano at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We had a long talk. He said, "Right, I'll take you on trial for 3 months." And that's how it was. That was
30
it.
years later.
Yeah.
So, when you go to these events, I'm also thinking about it, people must want to talk to you, like I do,
Yes.
about who he was.
Yes.
Because there's the myth, isn't there? And
Yes.
there's obviously the man.
Yes.
And you got to see both.
I got to see both.
In
But
action.
I remember him saying to me, "Remember, when you come to work for me, you've got to be like the monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil."
Yeah.
And lots of people, ask me certain questions. I said, "I'm sorry, I don't know."
Yeah.
And I've been really faithful to the old man in this respect,
All the way through.
all
Yeah.
the way through.
When, at that point, obviously Ferrari racing was such a massive part of what they did. Also making the world's most beautiful
And
cars.
we were winning.
You were
That's the
winning.
thing too.
Yeah, exactly. How did he balance the road car side? As a man, when he came in the office, what would make him most...
Formula One.
It would
Formula
be-
One, yes. He was happy because if you didn't sell road cars, you couldn't race. He got the money from the road cars to race in Formula One. And if he didn't sell them, he didn't race.
So that's what pushed him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, would I be right? And she's going to shoot me down probably, but would I be right? And I was led to believe much later on, in more recent years, like the last 10, 15 years, that his concessionaires around the world, like Jack Swatters and Maranello concessionaires, and what's the gentleman's name in America, they all contributed
Yes.
more than the fact they sold Ferrari cars. They contributed to the racing program because
They-
in their interests that racing should take place because it was good for their PR value. So they actually invested in Ferrari racing as apart from buying the cars.
Yeah.
They invested in the racing program or whatever it was. I heard this from various sources because I've been around a long time now.
They were all his best friends, that's why.
That's right, they're all his best friends.
They always were.
And they wanted to be part of the family.
What was
And
the
they were-
American one in New York?
It's just, Canetti.
Canetti.
Yeah,
Canetti.
sorry to be
I spoke to Canetti yesterday.
Well, I'm
the
80
son.
years old.
Yeah.
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 That's right.
And so when we watch movies like Ford versus Ferrari and things, you didn't watch it.
I saw it, but I went with the mechanics in Maranello
Yeah.
to see it. And they all sat there. We got up and walked out because they kept saying, that's not right, that's not his helmet. The old man never went out of Modena. So, and they showed him at Le Mans.
That's
which
what Dad said. Dad
That's
went to the-
ridiculous. He suffered with claustrophobia. He wouldn't go in a lift. If he could, if he went in an airplane.
Really?
He never went out of Modena.
So you just couldn't handle them then?
We didn't. There were so many mistakes, so we got up and walked out.
God, isn't that crazy? But you enjoyed it.
No, not desperately. No, I mean, I had to go and see it, quite obviously, because
Well,
it was
we had
part
to
of
go
my
and
life.
see it, yes.
But my feeling was that I thought the basic story of the battle of what it was as a team to make, who was going to run the Ford team, and we all knew who was going to run the Ferrari team. But that background industrial story was correct, because I believe it was like that, and the backbiting and we'll need your driver and that sort of thing went on. But to be very honest, I thought the driving side of it was disappointing. I thought that, the shifting gears and driving into corners, it was very, very immature and sort of was out of date with what racing was really like. You only had to see other films that had been made over the years to realize that it had to be more realistic. So I was disappointed in the sheer, they're calling me in the pits, and you just turn right and go in the pits. That doesn't
But it
happen.
was good for people to understand.
It was.
About
Everybody-
Le Mans.
Yes.
And understand a little bit. but
Yes.
It's not for purists.
No, exactly.
But you know what it is, when we know what it's all about, then we will criticise.
Totally.
Totally.
Same way as if you were a pilot and you were watching
Yeah.
Top Gun.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
you'd be
yeah,
like, that
yeah.
is-
Yeah.
What the hell are they doing?
Exactly. I remember, Tom Christensen and I sort of just looked at each other during the movie and went, what is this?
Yeah, I bet.
But the fact was, it appealed to the general public and made them understand more what racing was like. But actually, it wasn't really like that, because it was much more demanding than
Demanding,
it showed. But
So
it was a
Enzo would
story.
have been that happy with the...
But
What would Enzo have thought about him being portrayed
He'd
like
never
that?
have watched it.
he
would he?
wouldn't have watched it.
No.
That's right. I mean, when he knows he never goes anywhere, he's never been out of Modena. And why would they put him in Le Mans?
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy.
Just so they could
He
point at
wouldn't
Henry
even
Ford.
go in a lift because he suffered with claustrophobia. I remember when he took me home one evening. I lived where Chris Amon lived, where Jonathan Williams lived. I lived on the 8th floor. And I always remember he said to me, what floor are you on? I said, the 8th floor. He went, oh, call me tomorrow.
And was he... What kind of a boss was he? Did he...
Oh, when he was quite strict.
Was he really?
When he wanted something, he wanted it, and you couldn't ever say no to the old man.
Yeah.
I remember once, because I used to do all the translations for the Formula One teams, all the telexes, and I had to translate them, and then the old man would reply in Italian. I had to translate that, and he used to come and watch me on the telex machine, and he'd ask me, "How does it work? What do you have to do to say this?" Anyway, I remember once he told me to put something somewhere, put that there and do that, which I did, and I took it to Cavallino while he was having lunch. He looked at it and he threw it up in the air. He said, I said, "Ingegnere, may I say something, please?" I said, you told me to put that there, and I've put it there. You told me to move this and put that there, and I've done it. Send it. That was
Really?
it. Never apologised. Never said really thank you. No, that was him.
And when he was... I mean, what was that you were so obviously intimately involved in running his life, I'm sure. So what was an average day like for him? Because we only know it... You know it from having met him and, seen
Every
him on
day.
those moments every day.
Yeah.
But what was his everyday life like? Because
Everyday life was he got up in the morning, got dressed, went to the barber's in Modena,
Really?
had
Yeah.
a shave, and that is the hair done. Then he went to the cemetery to say hello to his son and his wife.
Amazing.
And then at 11 o'clock, he'd go back to the office in Trento Trieste, if there was somebody there or he had an appointment. And then he'd come to Maranello at 11 o'clock, every morning at 11 o'clock. And then he'd have until lunchtime. At lunchtime, he'd go to Fiorano, where he has his cook. He had his lunch there. And then he stayed there until 6 or 7.
She talks about Fiorano.
Fiorano.
What about Modena? where we used to test. That's where I
The
went.
Modena, yes.
That's
I
round
used to go.
where the wall was, all the way around, like the
Yeah,
city
when
wall.
Bandini was there and Scarfiotti used to come, we used to go to the Modena circuit. Mike was there, Derek was there. I used to go and watch them.
No facilities at all.
Really?
Don't-
Just
nothing.
like three little.
It was like Le
concrete-
Mans many years ago. no toilet, no nothing.
No, absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
I've got a fabulous picture of me sitting in the Formula One for my Formula One test. I'm sitting in the car, and standing next to it's Mauro Forghieri, who I always had a great respect for and enjoyed his company. And he's just looking down at me in the cockpit of the car, and I'm about to go out for my first ever drive in a Ferrari. But there's no Formula One Ferrari. There's nobody else. I mean, there were no people.
No.
There was probably 2 mechanics and a trailer, but there was nothing. And the pit lane, such as it was absolutely deserted. And it's almost a black and white photograph. And he's looking at me like this. And I have to tell you what actually happened. He leant into the cockpit. He did make sure my seatbelts were tight. Because the first time I'd had seatbelts in a race car was '68. And he pulled down on the belt. And he looked into me and he said, "Derek," he said, he said, "if you crash the car, the last time you ever drive a red car, maybe a green car, which was the national colours of a British team, but never another red car." And I went off going, "Oh, lovely." And I sort of drove around the track, and it was piddling with water. And I had intermediates because the wet tyres were coming back from the German Grand Prix. And I went through the little chicane and round this long left-hand curve. And as I went round there, sort of feeling my way, because I'd never driven there in the wet before, and I'd never driven a Formula One before. So I'm driving around, and as I go round, there is a 2+2 sitting there with the sort of condensation coming out of the exhaust, and Enzo's sitting in it, watching me. And not only that, but he was sitting on the outside of the corner, so if I lost control, I was going to take out El Commendatore on the way. And I had to go around, and I had to make my mind. I went, "Oh God, how far, how crazy do I go? How fast do you go?" The most important man in the world of motorsport sitting there, judging whether I was good enough to really be in Formula One or I was really a waste of space. And I went off, and obviously, fortunately in my life, there's several times I've had a dilemma like that. And somehow I always go just right, not too fast that I fall off because he's going to think I'm a complete moron. And another thing is I was not going too slowly, that I was also a moron because I was a bit of a slow one. So I did my laps and I got my drive at the Gold Cup and so on. But that was my sort of, baptism of fire into Formula One, if that's the right word.
Crazy. What was he like when because there were obviously all these group of amazing drivers. What was he like when he knew there was a new driver he wanted or he'd heard about? How? Because it was his choice, right? I mean,
No, he was the only one
He
that
was the only
said
one.
yes or no.
So did he get excited about it or no? No, really.
Never saw the old man excited. I was the only one excited when I saw him coming down the road. He was bigging his klaxon. It was a Saturday morning. I wanted to go to the hairdressers, and he happened to see me, and he said, "Into the factory." And I went home at 12 o'clock at night,
Really?
sending TEDx's to all the Formula One teams. So I had to go in, translate what he'd written, send it takes a long time, the TEDx's, everyone to every single team.
So who would have? Did he have an attention for detail, or did he just see things?
He saw things the
Yeah.
way. Yeah, no, he was very intelligent.
He was.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, time passes, and it makes us all look more fondly on everything in the past. Did his mechanics love him? Did they
Yes,
respect?
they respected him.
Really?
Yes, they still do today.
Yeah.
When they talk about I call him the old man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, they say he was the only one. And we miss him. We miss him, really.
Yeah.
We know, his attention. He had a lot of thought for people, his workers especially. He was, he had most of the workers from Maranello and around Modena,
Yeah.
and he respected them. And if anyone needed anything, they had the courage to go to him, he would help them.
Right.
But without anybody knowing. He didn't want anybody to know. Well, there was a young boy in the design office, had a tumour, and he had to have an appointment with this special professor from Bologna Hospital, and he couldn't get one because, being a professor, which is very famous, if you're just Tom, Dick and Harry, you don't get. So when the old man found out, he said to me, phone Professor Cavallino in Bologna. I phoned him. I got an appointment for the boy. The boy was operated on, and I think the old man paid for it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He's there still today.
Mm.
This young boy.
So his kindness came through in
Oh, yes.
private ways.
Yes, but he didn't want anybody to know. Nobody should know what he does. He gave a lot of money to charity too.
If I think and interject,
Yeah.
I think, I want to ask you what you met Enzo. We went thanks to Brenda getting us an invitation to see him in 3 or 4 years before he passed away. And also, what you thought of that meeting of him, but how he came over to you as a sort of such a major personality or character or mentor of motorsport, really.
It was amazing because we went down there with my mum, and I just started doing Formula Ford. So Dad was, and he knew Enzo was probably within the last couple of years. So you're like, let's go down and see it. And we went through the workshop and the tile where you'd signed all those years before. It was really a great feeling. And then
You were lucky.
Yeah. Then we go in the office, and who's his consigliere?
Well, it used to be Senor Gozzi, but I don't think it was.
I don't know. It was someone there.
Yeah.
Dr. Gozzi,
And
yeah.
all Dad said to me was, he looks like he doesn't speak English, doesn't understand it, but don't count on it. Don't listen. Don't.
He
Never
was
knew.
very astute.
I just speak French with him all the time, so I
Yes.
still don't know, but I swear he knew English.
Yeah.
No,
So-
he didn't.
He didn't? Oh, right. Okay.
You
Well, it's
certainly
good that he
don't wanna
kept.
He knew
Okay.
French. He
Okay.
understood
Okay.
French.
So,
So we went in, and that big, the prancing horse
Yes,
head, and Crystal
yes,
was
yeah.
there, and he's sitting in. It was like a scene out of The
He's
Godfather.
very little things on
Very
his
few
desk.
things on the whole
On his
table.
desk, yes, was his diary, his pen, the ink. That was it.
That's so-
Photograph
that's how I
of his
remember
son on the wall,
Yeah.
and that was it. Dark.
Dark, and we went in, and Dad, Mum, and I, and so they're talking, and you're talking in French. I remember
Yes.
that. And then he said to me, "So are you racing?" And I thought, this is my one chance. I've got to say something. I said, "Yes, I am. I've just started Formula Ford." Now, my father was the last British driver to race for Ferrari in Formula One, and I want to be the next. And I was, I gulped like this.
but he actually said,
And he said-
I will be watching.
He said, "I'll be watching," and he went, "Ben, to Ben or something." And then out of his drawer, he
Yes.
pulled out a Ferrari, the leather and wood key fob,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
and a tie, which I
Yeah.
still have today.
Yeah.
And I do too, yes.
Yeah, it was.
No, he was.
really,
He was. No, he was. He
He
was.
gave Mum a
He
head
seemed to
start,
be, a very strong person and no heart. That was not true.
no.
If you knew the real Ferrari.
So, because legend has it that he insulated himself from the drivers that died and the risk and the. So how? But you must have seen those moments. You saw the telex, the phone call. Someone had died in his car or another car. How did that moment happen?
Nothing. It was Monday morning was the same, like when we lost. Everybody had their doors shut. Nobody opened the door. The old man come in, buongiorno, and that was it. He went into his office. He kept to himself. The same when Jill died, which was very, very important for him.
Do you remember that day?
Yep,
How did that go?
terrible.
What was it?
It was the same thing. We all closed our doors. Nobody came out. Silence.
Yeah.
It was too massive a moment.
Too big a moment
For people
because
to
he was very attached to Jill. Very
And
attached.
you must have seen it in him.
I've seen it.
Yeah, you must have seen the toll that it took
Yeah,
on.
but silence. Complete silence. You were afraid to even ask him anything, But there we are.
How do you think about that? Because you, as one of the drivers that could have died, you didn't. But how do you think that would have?
All I can say is on the lead up to going to Ferrari, I remember I had a lot of opposition from my family, and a real one. Right? This story
you should tell that
it's
story.
more about you than me, but I was reading magazines, building, during that year of motorsport, and I remember there was a magazine. There was a picture of Enzo Ferrari on the front and a picture of a burning car in the background, and it said, "The man that kills his drivers."
Yes, that's terrible.
Do you remember that? I go,
Yeah, I do.
"Jeez." And meanwhile, I'm thinking, I've been offered to drive with this man, and my family are reading this stuff. and family are very obviously possessive about their kids and stuff. And I remember.
My mum was so sick.
Yeah, your mum was very sick. Was in hospital. I came back from my test drive at Monza, which I had, and I got the summons. You will now go down to Modena and you'll meet Enzo. And the next day I met Enzo, which is another story, wonderful story nonetheless. And literally, I came back to England, and then 3 weeks later I was in a race. I had a couple of more test days, that sort of thing, and I came back to Mont, and we did the race there. And I remember I was involved in a multiple crash. To this day, we don't know who started it, but there were all a big group coming around the Parabolica. I was about fourth. I had been on pole, a position, and we're coming around. The Dino was never very quick in speed. It was fast once you got it going, but it wasn't powerful like the Cosworths. And I was coming out in the middle of the pack, and suddenly I got touched or something. And I spun around. There was no reason to spin unless you were hit, because we used to go two abreast around it. And so 2 Ferraris went out in the crash. My own Brabham that Peter Westbury was in went out in the crash. And that was it. And I thought, well, it's the end of my time at Ferrari. And I hadn't signed a contract because I was too damn nervous. And I remember, so it was all over, went back to England, and I was very worried because Jean-Pierre Jousseau was badly injured and so on and so forth. I thought, well, that's it. We rode 3 Ferraris off that day. And I drove, and it was not my fault, but I was the one that started the first one with 2 of them. I can't believe this. I thought, well, I'll never get a contract now. And the next thing is, I walk back into the house, and my mother's standing in the kitchen with Pam's mother, and they both used to drink for the county. And they were slupping away there, and they both looked at me sort of at 6 o'clock at night and said, we have a telex here from Ferrari saying, come to Italy and sign your contract. And they said, if you sign that contract, you'll never walk in this house again. And that's how I had to start my life with Ferrari. And I mean, I've talked about it before, but
my mum was saying you have to do it.
Oh yes, well, yeah, but I went to the hospital where Pam was in hospital at night, and she said, "Oh, I thought, oh, Christ!" I knew she was ill, very poorly with colitis, and so I went in, and she was sitting up in bed in the hospital in Chichester, smiling away, and she said, "So how was it?" And I said, "Oh, everything's great," but I said, had the mothers on to me today. She said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've been offered a contract. I've got to go and sign." She said, "You've got to do it. You've got to do it." So I told her the story. She said, "Oh, you've got to do it." So that was it.
That was it.
So I went and did it, and we survived the rest. I never heard another word about it. But I think it was just the fact they were having a good time that afternoon, and that was it. And that was how my time with Ferrari started. But we were all nervous about this impression,
yeah.
but about Ferrari drivers getting hurt, and it was obviously. But going to Ferrari, as I just said, was the greatest thing, and I said to everybody, and there were some major team owners that said to me, he'll ruin your career. John Wyer, Ken Tyrrell, and I think John Cooper. I know John Cooper, and they said he'll ruin your career. Going to Ferrari will ruin your career. And I thought, you're probably right, but it could easily be my career was going to be over anyway. So I went because in those days you didn't have sponsorship. You went, and if somebody came along, a team brought in another driver, money to support him your way, and I didn't have any money behind me. And so that was it. So I sort of followed up. Ferrari was the way to go because I wanted to go to Ferrari anyway. What an honor! I mean, I've said it before, but you know this. Any driver out there would like to drive for them. Like Lewis Hamilton right now would give his eye teeth to, but he can't get out of the Mercedes rigmarole, and he's in a car that's really good. But he would love to have done a year or two at Ferrari, just for the experience. You look at the drivers who went there.
Apparently, Senna was coming to us.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I'm sort of surprised he didn't go there before, but I can't remember how well Ferrari were going at the time, because Senna wasn't going to go unless he had a good car. And of course, it's all like this: which team is the better one? So he probably was holding on to see a bit of future.
One day there was a knock on my door, and I said, "Oh, Auntie," opened the door. There was Gerhard Berger with Senna.
Yeah.
I said, "You're nuts! Coming here." They didn't have a Fiat car. They had I don't know, and nobody was allowed into Ferrari if they had a different car. Yeah, and yes, and these two, Senna and both from McLaren, What the hell are you doing here? And Gerhard said, well, it was raining in Imola. I said, let's go and see Brenda. And they both turned out. It's the first time I met Senna. Lovely guy. Lovely guy. Yeah.
Did you get any impression of what Enzo would have felt about Senna?
Well, Enzo would have gone berserk if he didn't know both of them were there. Yeah.
I mean, he'd have liked it, wouldn't he?
I don't think so.
Well, it
He
depends what
might
they'd
have
done
done, might
before,
have played, I don't know. But, Berger was our driver. He just left and gone to McLaren.
well, that's a reason.
Senna was with McLaren and both doing in Ferrari. I don't know how they got in. I don't know how they let
They
them
probably
in.
used your name, Brenda.
Probably, I don't know. I like seeing them.
So which of the drivers? I mean, obviously Mike Parks. That was more than a friendship. But
yeah.
who were the other? I mean, obviously you love my dad, but who else did you really like?
All of them. They're all my boys. I call them my boys. I've written a book called My Boys.
Have you?
Yes, a little book. They're supposed to be publishing it, where I talk about them all, their jokes. I mean, Rennie Arnoux was, God, drove you nuts. He's a lovely guy. They're all lovely guys. I used to do everything. I washed their overalls, packed their bags, booked their hotels, did their fan mail. I did everything for them. And then they gave their girlfriends my telephone number. I get a phone call where someone say, hello, and I say, excuse me, who are you? He said, oh, didn't Gerhard tell you, or didn't Pinker Paulino tell you? I said, no. He said, well, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so.
This week.
But you did do it, didn't you? But you always helped out, didn't you?
Always.
Yeah,
if I
you
couldn't
did.
do it, I'd say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. But I did everything. Jill slept at my house. He was testing in Fiorano one weekend, one day, and he said to me, have you got a bed at your house? I said, of course I've got a bed in my house. He said, right, I'm coming to sleep in it tonight. He came, it was August, it was boiling hot, and I didn't have air conditioning in those days. He came, I cooked him tortellini with cream sauce, beef steak and chips, and he had fruit, water, he only drank water. Then he was studying for his helicopter pilot's license. He went into the sitting room, he studied for about half an hour, 6:30, I'm going to bed. I gave him my bed, I slept on the divan, called him 7:30 in the morning, got up, had a shower. What do you want for breakfast? Nothing. Glass of water, and then he went back to the circuit.
Wow.
I said, I think I ought to put on my front door. Joe Villeneuve slept here.
You should have done, especially on the head of your bed. That would have won a few.
That would have been a little daunting for whoever went there next. Talk about food and drink. What you said yesterday to me, or Saturday, I mentioned, what did he eat? And you were like, he loved tortellini. I mean, was he a man of habit, Enzo?
Yes.
Did he
He
also
only
go and
ate certain things, because when he got to a certain age, certain things he couldn't eat. And he always used to have a test on a Friday for the doctors, for his blood test and everything. If he's all right, then he'll have a little glass of whiskey. And I brought him whiskey from England, the Glen Grant he liked.
Yeah.
And I bought him peppermints because he liked peppermints. So the first time I bought him the Glacier mints,
Yeah.
and he said to me, they're okay with the taste of nothing. So I said, right. So I got the
Extra
ones
strong.
extra strong.
Oh, yeah.
He said, they're fine. And I used to send him extra strong, get him extra strong peppermints from England. I used to phone the Ferrari in England, said, send me some more tablets. And they used to suck one every day.
I watched I thought it was pretty bad actually. The Lamborghini is a movie.
I haven't seen it.
I wouldn't run. It was very lightly done.
Yeah.
But it was from the Lamborghini side, and it is an amazing story.
Yes.
He did.
He used to get arguments.
He just did. But that was a real time rivalry, right?
Yes, yeah. They always used to say, you drive tractors, you don't drive cars.
Yeah. But surely, in reality, Ferrari was still known as the car manufacturer, and Lamborghini was known as the tractor manufacturer, or agricultural. And I think it's only because they're in the same vicinity that they built their cars. Otherwise, I don't think there would have been. And obviously, one was trying to prove he was better than the other.
You should watch it. It's on Netflix.
Oh yeah, well, okay, I'll have a look at it. But anyway, I can't say any more than that. But I just think that Ferrari, whatever anybody else tried to compete with, he was still Ferrari, or it was the Ferrari name, and that was unique. Always will be.
Yeah, and I'm sure, being Enzo Ferrari, you're at the top, so everybody wants to have a crack at you, right? Everybody in Formula One.
Yeah, you're the target.
Yeah.
You're the target.
Absolutely.
Did he? So when it came to the road cars, obviously that's where it all started. What was his? What do you think his? If he had to take one car from everything he ever made in his lifetime, what was his favourite car? What do you think it was?
I don't know. He drove a 330 GTC.
That's what he used to pick you up in, right?
No, he came more in the 2+2.
Well, he drove
because
in,
it's smaller. The
Yeah,
GTC
this
was
is bigger.
really a two-seater, but there were only
Yeah.
two of us, so it wouldn't matter. But
Yeah.
I just remember him really in a bigger car,
Bigger
in
car,
the
yeah.
2+2. But that didn't say he didn't drive everything.
I don't think he ever said he had a private car,
No.
but I mean, he used to change every. I mean, in his later days, he had Renault gave him a car to try out. It was the first one that had. You're short of petrol. The petrol's down. It said everything. You need more air in your tires, and he was fascinated by all these
sure he
things.
was, yes.
Okay, he never had it before. So he said to them, I will buy it from you. He said, no, we'll give it to you as a present. No. He said, I will pay half, 50%.
Really?
Yeah. You could never give him anything. He wanted, yes, he always just wanted to pay for everything.
Yeah. Did do you think, how would he view he would enjoy the technology in the new Ferraris, do you think? If he liked the technology?
I don't know, he
advancement?
relied a lot on Folghieri.
Did he?
Yeah, he trusted
Yeah.
Folghieri.
Yeah. But he would have enjoyed.
Probably.
Probably
If he
not.
liked it, yes. If he didn't
Yeah.
like it, he'd say, that's a load of shit.
Would he really? He just straight up to the designers.
Always.
Yeah.
Right to the point.
Yeah. Which probably makes people know where they stood. And,
Well,
and-
that's why they got good cars.
No, yeah, that's why.
Actually, you heard what I said last night. I prefer the old cars. I think the new cars, to me, they all look the same. They haven't got that style that they used to
You
have.
can't tell one from the other.
You can't tell one
almost.
from the other. And they don't put on the back anymore what they are, what they used to do.
Yeah. It's amazing. So, one of the things that is incredible to me is, last year, 75 years of Ferrari, and the anniversary, and I was at Pebble Beach, and
Yeah.
it was really very special to see that. Do you think he would be? What do you think he'd make of the huge passion for Ferrari? I mean, it was alive when he was there, but it was like you were in the moment, you were in the
Yes.
thing, but now it's with reflection, it's bigger than it ever was. His legend is bigger than it ever was. What would he make of all this hubbub?
I don't think he'd make a lot of difference. For him, it was just Ferrari. They'd sell, and he was happy they sold Ferraris, because if they didn't sell Ferraris, he couldn't race in Formula One. That's where the money came from. As long as they're selling, then he was happy, because he was more interested in Formula One.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was his thing.
That was his thing,
Yeah,
Formula
definitely.
One.
What did he think about Le Mans? So when the sports cars were going, I mean, that was a big.
Well, they
part
won
of
it a
wasn't
few times, yeah.
They won it, yeah. I mean, again, racing. He probably just loved the fact they were pure and
Yeah.
one race.
Well, it
But he used
was
to.
proving two things. Sorry.
Yes.
It was proving, he could do sprint races, if you like, and then endurance, and the cars would last. And they had a record of winning at Le Mans. The year I went with Ferrari was my first ever time at Le Mans, 1970, wasn't it? I think. And, we finished the race.
Yeah.
And actually, that's right, I was in the, hold on. I was in the 512. Mike Parks, I remember that was the next year when I drove a Daytona, and I was catching him up towards the finish for fourth place, or third in the class, and I didn't make it. But that doesn't matter, but I know Mike and I drove against each other. But the 512 was the year before that. And the car was great at the moment. It survived, really. It was very strong.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he used to say. He said, like today, I'm always arguing with the Ferrarista, because most of them prefer Leclerc, and I love Sainz. I think he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a good driver. And I say, you forget we have two drivers in Ferrari, not one. And I said, you must remember what Mr. Ferrari used to say, it's more important that a Ferrari wins. It doesn't matter who's driving it, as long as Ferrari
Yeah.
wins.
That was his whole.
You
spirit
told the
of life.
Ferrarista that, though.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm sure. Do you? So there you are. You worked for him for that period of time. Why did you leave? Why did you stop working there?
I retired.
You did. You had
Yes.
It was retirement time.
No, I could have stayed on, but Montezemolo made me leave. He told Piero when I was 60, she's got to go.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That will do it.
No, if the old man had been there,
Yeah. it
that
wouldn't
wouldn't
No.
happen.
But that's the end of
I
that
could have
era,
stayed
isn't it?
another 5 years.
Yeah. Do you?
But he Montezemolo used to say, Brenda talks too much. So I said to Piero, at least I talk, I'm not like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, just to give people a perspective, this was a phase of your life that you had no premonition would happen.
No,
You're a teacher,
I taught English.
and there's that you learnt Italian.
I
time
learned
ago.
Italian because I took an au-pair job in Bologna first, teaching a little 4-year-old boy
Oh, wow.
to learn English. I had to learn Italian. I didn't know a word. I remember once the father said to me he wanted a grembiule, not grembiule. And I ran into the kitchen to the cook and I said, grem. So they said, grembiule. And this is how I learned my Italian. I still don't speak perfect Italian. But when somebody says to me, I said, you speak English? They say no. I said, well, shut up then.
Exactly. He must have I mean, obviously, you speaking Italian was.
Yeah, but she was almost the only
I was the only woman.
there.
I was 199 men and me. And being, yes, nobody else there. And I did everything. I worked for Foguieri, I worked for Cagliette, I worked for Tomaini, I did the old man's road, I worked for Piero, I did it all. I looked after the drivers.
Because the old man wouldn't have a girl there, would he?
No, he didn't want to
Really?
go.
I mean, he
I
didn't
was
want
the
women
only
there
one.
because
He
they put
didn't
the
want
men off
women.
work.
Yeah.
Maybe put him off work.
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants.
But probably I taught, Piero was my student. I taught him English, probably because, and with the mother I was very friendly. With the whole family, I've done everything for the whole family.
Yeah.
I taught Enzo, I saw Enzo was there with his father, Giacomo, and I taught the daughter, Antonella, English.
Who is the Ferrari member who's now the surviving Ferrari named personality? He was about a cousin or a nephew, wasn't he? The one that's there now is around now. I met him in England at Blenheim Palace last year at a Ferrari event. His name and his surname is Ferrari, but
Well, that may be Enzo, great
no,
grandson.
he's not. I'm sure his name wasn't Enzo.
Giacomelli.
I think that was more like it. He was like a bit surprised that he had the position and he was representing Ferrari.
No, he has the ex-son-in-law of Piero has the Ferrari at in California.
Yes, I know. I don't mean him. No, his
Well,
wife.
no, it is.
Piero's.
You're talking about him.
Piero's.
He's the new family member that's.
Yeah, I met
Maybe
him.
it's
I'll
the
get it.
daughter's new husband. He's called
I thought
Giacobazzi.
his name was Ferrari, but that.
No,
but it-
Giacobazzi.
Okay. But I know he turned up at this dinner with the Ferrari PR guy, who I've got to know, not got to know, but you've
Yeah.
seen him at events. And he introduced me and he said, you must come back to Maranello, we want to take you around. And the gentleman, the Mr. Ferrari that was there, who's probably 32, 34 years old, maybe a bit older.
It's probably the daughter,
He
Piero's daughter.
He seemed a bit sort of stunned by the fact he was the Ferrari, like, really? I'm the only one that's left, sort of thing. Apparently. I'll find his name. I was going to do it for you before, but I'll find his name.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to think of it because it's Antonella's new husband, second husband, because Giacomo was there last night. The father of Enzo was there last night. And he has the Ferrari at Beverly Hills.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, I know
And
of
this
him.
one
But
is called, he's a Giacobazzi, which is a very famous Giacobazzi
Yes.
for the wine.
Okay.
He's the son.
Okay.
And I can't think of his name. His surname isn't Giacobazzi. It'll come to me in a minute.
No.
But that's Antonella's
Yeah.
new old man.
We were trying to get a Ferrari dealership in Naples
I remember.
for some years because I own part of a Bentley
Yeah.
dealership in Naples, and the one dream was to be involved with a Ferrari dealership. But it seemed very much. I mean, this probably isn't for publishing, but we were put off by the fact that this particular gentleman you're talking about from Beverly Hills wanted the one in Naples as well.
Oh.
So he was pitching in, and we all felt, well, with the the Piero input, because he married Piero's daughter, correct?
Yeah.
He wasn't, we wouldn't get a child, Hope in Hell.
Yeah, because Piero owns half with him in Beverly Hills.
Well, there you are. Yeah.
I was just thinking as you were talking about that, like for Enzo, in that period of time you were with him, and the business started to grow. Did he believe his own status? Did he, like you see in Formula One, everyone gets so self-important. He didn't. He stayed the same.
No, stayed the same.
Really,
he liked to joke. He's just a simple man.
There's so much that doesn't match with the public persona that the media have made of it.
Yes, but
compared to the guy. Because you went for lunch with him, and
he basically hated the media.
Yes.
I think.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Well, they gave him such a hard time. I mean, I remember, because I came in as a green not young, I was 25, 6, 7 or whatever. But I remember arriving at Modena and I'm going to, would be you at lunch or whoever I was with from the team at lunch. I'd never eat at the Cavallino on my own necessarily. Somebody said, come on, let's go and eat. And it was just so obvious that the press was going to, and everybody was really upset in the press. And the newspapers in Bologna or Autosprint, whoever the people were in that region, they really were down on the drivers. I remember Chris Hayman getting really upset because they were giving him a hard time. They blame the drivers and give you a hard time, and you're going, thank God I never actually got to be showed if I had any potential. I think I was there too early in my career, to be honest, because it's only my 4th year. I think if I'd gone back 2 years later when I think I was more mature, I would have done better. But the way that the press treated Chris and Jackie Ickx and the other guys that had been there was very unnecessary.
Well, I tell you something about Chris. I looked after Chris. I did everything with Chris because he never spoke Italian. And I remember Monday morning after he'd raced, I used to have to get the newspaper, sports paper, and translate the article that he used to write.
Really?
Yes, but you know what I did? I never
said everything.
I never said everything. I didn't translate everything.
Just you knew
the nasty things because I knew it upset him.
Yeah. Well, true. So yeah. And it was the same about all the drivers. I was just lucky that I don't know. She probably kept it from me, but I wasn't there long enough. And whenever I went out, I was like on pole or something invariably. But the fact was that I was being sort of, in my opinion, brought on for the next year, whatever that was. And I guess I didn't come up to scratch in the end. But he went out of racing in the middle of '69 and said, "That's it, we're quitting." So everybody left Ferrari, Chris and everybody. And then they came back in with a flat 12. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story, but the press
really
if I'd gone to live in Italy, which I probably should have done like Chris did. No, but nobody lived in there, lived in the tap. I mean, they lived at home, and because the races were only every 2 to 3 weeks. So you're in Formula One, so they could go home and come back and do whatever. Yeah. But it was now latterly, everybody's had to live near the teams so that they can test and go in and do simulators and all that stuff.
I mean, there was a very different pressure to the drivers in to now.
The old man only liked certain journalists. He would entertain them, but the others he just ignored. But I remember Chris, he got a flat there in Modena. And I said I used to go and translate his things for him. I did everything. When he left everything. A house with all the furniture, 3 cars outside. Three cars outside. There was Alfa Romeo 500, and the police phoned me up and they said, if you don't come and take these away, we'll scrap them. And the furniture, instead of putting it into store, I would have to pay. Yeah. I took it. I have it in my house.
No.
I have all Chris's place. I sleep in his bed, all his furniture. I finished my new house in Maranello. I still have it. And you think this is the furniture for the late 60s. Yeah. I still have it.
Amazing.
So you still live in Maranello?
Yes.
What is your sort of relationship with Ferrari now? Is it not really?
Non-existent. I still speak to Piero because he was my tutor and I was his secretary. I still speak to him now and again. But other than that,
I don't. Like you said, you went to watch the movie with the mechanics.
Yeah, I went.
That kind of thing.
If there's something going on, if there is something special for Ferrari, I go. But other than that, I went to the factory about 2 months ago because I had an appointment with Piero, and they asked me for an identity card. And I said to them, "Where are we, Alcatraz?" And then they said, "You must sit there." I had to sit there. And they said, "We get somebody to take you where you have to go. You just can't go in and walk up." And they came about half an hour afterwards, and they said, "We're terribly sorry, we haven't got anybody to take you where you need to go." I said, "Well, don't worry, I know where I'm going. I'm going to my old office."
They were like, "Oh."
When you did?
I did.
Oh, great.
And I
Not
said,
much is going to stop you.
No.
Yeah, but it's awful when you go to these places because you know, they don't know who the hell you are, and you go, "Actually, yeah, I raced." Not saying me, because not anybody really knew me at Ferrari that much. But I mean, when you go places and they don't recognise you, and you go, "But I drove for you 20 years ago," and there's this moron on the gate who's security. Won't let you in.
No,
and they
Really
said,
gets you up.
and I said to Piero, "Listen, if you want to see me again, I'll see you outside in a coffee shop. I'm not going here again. I've never been since. I won't go."
When
I mean, I don't expect to be treated like the queen of what?
Sheba going
Yes,
in.
no, but I mean, Christ's sake.
When was the last time you saw Enzo? Tell me about that.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
No, I know, but I mean, do you
88,
remember the moment
was it
well?
Before 88, because the Pope came to Ferrara.
The Pope?
Yes, and the old man couldn't come because he was ill. He was in
God,
bed.
really?
He missed it. He spoke to him on the phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
Can you remember when that was?
That must have been 87, 86.
Yes.
Because he died in 88.
That's right, he did die.
And I just started, so I'm telling you, it was within the year he died. We went there.
Yeah.
So we nearly went when the Pope was there.
Yeah.
No wonder he didn't want to see us much. No, I'm sorry, I've been joking, but
So you saw him away from the factory or in the factory, do you think, the last time?
No, away from the factory. He did come to the factory a long time. When he was ill,
Okay.
he never came. He'd like to stay. He said, "I want to die in my own bed." And the doctors went there. They took the machines. Because he suffered, I think he had kidney problems.
And that's where you saw him last week?
I didn't go to his house, no. Wasn't allowed in.
Oh, wow. And so, do you remember, did you talk on the phone the last time?
I can't remember. I don't think so, because he wasn't that well and he didn't want to speak to anybody, he didn't want to see anybody. He was like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke to Piero.
That's how you were keeping in touch. It must have been tremendously sad for you when he
Well,
passed.
I tell you what, I was in Pebble Beach when he died.
Were you?
Yes,
Okay.
and it was August. He died on my birthday. My birthday is the 15th of August.
Yeah.
He was buried on the 15th of August, died on the 14th. And I phoned Piero and I said, "You want me to come home?" He said, "No, we've done it all." They buried him at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's what he wanted. In Modena. He did, because he didn't want all the fuss, he didn't want all the
He
people.
did it before anyone was awake.
6 o'clock.
Just did it his way.
Yeah.
Wow. So just like in closing, Dad, I'm going to ask you first. Like it was such an important part of your life, of your racing life. But why was, I'm going to kind of ask you the same question, Brenda. Out of all these amazing people that have got involved in racing over the years, why for you was Enzo so special? I mean, why?
as briefly as I can, obviously he was the only name I ever read about, because Ferrari was Ferrari, the cars were red, and he was this singular character that really was Mr. Motor Racing. And then somehow you always dreamt, I remember going to see the Italian Grand Prix in 1958, when I was 17, with my dear old stepfather, and I sat in the grandstands, overlooking the start line, and 9 years later I'm on the grid of that race, same race, 9 years later, but at that point I didn't even know I was going to even race. That sort of things go, whoa, that was spectacular. So that was all part of the build up to go to Ferrari, to see a red Ferrari and a dream that one day I'd own a Ferrari. It's amazing really, because all my successes have come with Porsche, but because I went to Ferrari first, it was my formative years, and he was a singular character who I met on numerous occasions. You'd come and pick me up from the hotel. His secretary, I don't think it was you that would phone me, but somebody would phone and say, "El Commander Torre's coming to pick you up. you're going to dinner with him tonight, and you go, do I really have to? Anyway, and mainly because we had to speak French, and it made my eating very difficult. But it was nonetheless a great honour. And you know, the other thing I'll say before I finish, was the fact that when we went into restaurants, must have gone out half a dozen times with him in that short period, but he, for some reason, I think he liked British drivers more than others. I might be wrong, but there was something about it, probably because we couldn't speak the same language. And literally, we get there, and he would drive in his Ferrari in his shirt sleeves and braces, as we call them. And we get there, and when we walked into the restaurant, he had opened the door for me and let me go through first. I mean, amazing, really, that he should be like that. But that's giving an insight probably to the other side of him. But it was just a race for Ferrari. It was spectacular, and something that will always, despite whatever I did with any other manufacturer in the world, to actually drive my first professional drive, and the impetus and the impression that Ferrari put on me has been there for life, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
I think it's the same with everybody. I mean, when I think to myself, the only woman, 199 men, and he chose me to be his secretary, that was an honour for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
English girl.
Yeah. It's astonishing, isn't it? Because
Astonishing.
he wouldn't have women in the factory, would he?
No, I was the only one.
Amazing. So, last words. What don't people know about him? What if you wanted?
He's a very human person, very humble. He didn't like all the fusses and everything, you know. He did a lot for charity without anybody knowing. And he had a wonderful sense of humour. He said to me once, best Formula One chassis. I said, engineer, I'm the only woman here. There's no competition.
Lovely, yeah.
And I remember once, too, it was in August, you know, we had 3 races in August. Nobody was around. Everything's closed in Italy in August. And I went into the office. I mean, I always used to wear a suit and a nice suit. He was very particular. No? He looked at what you wore and what you did. And I went, it was August and it was hot. I thought, oh God, I put on a summer dress and I put on a pair of those sandals, just your big toe goes through.
Yeah.
Never again. When he saw me, he said, where do you think you are, at the sea? Never went to the office like that anymore.
Bet you didn't.
Used to wear shorts.
Oh,
Amazing.
Oh, I got one last. What watch did he wear? Do you remember did he like watches?
Ferrari watch, probably.
No, it wasn't.
Because he gave Roger Bailey a watch
know
from
he
his
did.
drawer, and
Yes.
I always wondered what watch that
Yeah,
was.
that was probably a Ferrari. He gave me
Ferrari
one
watch,
too.
yeah.
I did something, I worked for him all day Sunday once, typing out his discussion with he wanted it on paper, so I had to type everything. You know, I had to wear a ear and I registered, I taped it on. I had to tape it on. And on Monday morning, he never said to yourself, thank you, or da-da-da. I found a watch on my desk, Cordiali Saluti Ferrari, to thank me for what I'd done on the Sunday.
Fantastic.
Wow. How wonderful.
I mean, if you asked him, I'm sure, for anything to help, if you needed help, or that, because lots of times he used to say, why don't my people who work for me, come and ask them themselves. I mean, how can you go up to ask Enzo Ferrari, I need 10,000 euro or something? Nobody would ever do that. I mean, I wouldn't even do it.
No.
And he used to say, if you need something, why don't you ask it? Yeah.
But in his heart, he would have done it.
Yeah.
Oh, Brenda, thank you so much for
No,
doing this.
it's
This
a
was
pleasure.
great.
Good.
And getting Dad here
And it's
was
lovely to see your dad. I haven't seen him for ages.
I know.
Finally, we have to meet across the world somewhere, isn't it?
I know. I just couldn't believe it. Came off the stage and there you were. And thank you, Veronica, for letting us come in your house.
Welcome.
Thanks for listening to Life with Legends, and I hope you enjoyed it. But don't forget to go to my website, lifewithlegends.com, to check out the portraits I've taken of my amazing guests. Available as limited edition archival museum quality prints. I think they're quite special. And where I can, they have been signed by the legends themselves. Again, lifewithlegends.com, and I'll see you next week.